And on that site, you can, basically we decided to put a Google site up for parents and staff. And we quickly, filled that with information related to remote learning. And obviously, it's changed quite a bit since then, but we have our contact for our technology help desk there, and we went from supporting, normally about 5,000 people to supporting not just 5,000, majority employees, but supporting 24,000 students and their parents and grandparents and caregivers. And so, our help desk team has been amazing. Since this all started, we've added a field technician who's fluent in Spanish. And we have recently added a field technician who's fluent in Mandarin. And so, expanding that, we found that our users and our help desk both preferred chat for the most part, not everybody, of course. But the chat in Zendesk would allow our technicians to support, 11 or 12 people at once, as opposed to being on the telephone for 20 minutes and only being able to support one user during that time period. We did a lot of things to try to gather information about connectivity. So before March of 2020, we had a homework hotspot program predominantly for high school students. We were blessed to get a part of the Sprint 1 Million project grant. And so we had 770 homework hotspots from Sprint for our high school students only at that time. They have since changed that. So Sprint, that program is phasing out, but the 10 million project 10 million from T-Mobile, I believe is going to be K-12. But so what we found there were, a lot of students in all grade levels, of course, that did not have connectivity at home. We estimated that we were somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. And in reality, based on the hotspots need that we've had, we were closer to 10% in Buncombe County. Of course, Buncombe County schools is also, Buncombe County includes Asheville City Schools as well. So we're a pretty rural district. So we've gone from about 800 homework hotspots to now 3,000. And we scrambled and added, 200 here, 500 there, 100 here, wherever we could get them from. This was at a time when it was hard to get equipment and devices. And so we were able to get 500 from North Carolina State Connectivity Project from Verizon Wireless. We were able to get help from Dogwood for 100 or so here and there. We purchased about 1,500 homework hotspots from US Cellular and deploy those. So we got help from places, but we also went from a very small budget for homework hotspots with help from community partners like Asheville Technologies and Eblin to about $150,000 annual hotspot bill. And we've worked with the county on that as well. But so that was a big change for us. What we found was that we had several pockets in the county that just could not get cellular coverage, adequate cellular coverage. And we began the process of identifying those families. And we had about 80 addresses that we sent to Charter, Skyrunner, French Broad. And, we were hoping that there would be good line of sight for a majority of those families. We were able to work with Skyrunner to connect up less than 10 of those families. So about 9 families we connected to Skyrunner. We tried, now Skyrunner was wonderful to work with. They went out to those addresses, to each one of them, between 60 and 80 addresses, I would say, and did a test to see if they could get any line of sight, bounce it off of a neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were able to get 9 families connected. We were also worked with Charter, and we sent them a list, and we originally narrowed it down to about 20 that we hoped to get connected, and ultimately we got about 6 that we could connect at a price point that was affordable. And so those 6 families ended up at a cost of about $20,000. And what we found was that there were some families that were not that far from existing fiber, but because the head-end equipment would have had to have been upgraded or replaced to push the signal that extra mile or two, it just was not, it wasn't feasible. It was too cost prohibitive. Not enough customers, to justify an increase in head-end equipment. So it wasn't just about fiber to the home, fiber and coax. It was also about the head-end equipment. And so that was a problem, that we need to try to figure out and address. But if you've gone to that remote website, you'll see that we've got an FAQ in addition to the help desk connect contact information, how-to videos for students and parents and teachers. We also have the Western North Carolina Wi-Fi hotspot lot map, and then information about Skyrunner internet access offers, Spectrum Internet Assist, AT&T internet access, French Broad electric fiber availability. Sandy Mush Community Center made their Wi-Fi available in their parking lot and in the community center when they were there. The Broad River Fire Department made their Wi-Fi available, and all of the public libraries in Buncombe County. We also worked with Asheville City Foundation and Buncombe County Schools Foundation, Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County Schools Foundation. Worked with Skyrunner to provide connectivity to the Housing Authority. And so we're looking forward to seeing that project finish, and all of the residences there being able to have 25 megabits per second to their device at no cost. And so that will help. We also expanded our virtual academy, and we're currently accepting applications for that. We essentially doubled our virtual academy, and that's separate from the remote learning, obviously, that everybody's been participating in. But we are also planning to expand our virtual academy down to the elementary this year, with about somewhere between 20 and 50 spots potentially available for students in Buncombe County who want to attend fully virtual through our BCS Virtual Academy. So, a lot of stuff to unpack there, but the big takeaways we had was, we thought we knew what our percentage was, but it turned out to be about 10% in reality, because we've opened it up and provided a hotspot to everybody that asked for one, right? We found that families with multiple students, needed a hotspot per student. So we did a hotspot per student as opposed to per family. We found that our Sprint hotspots and original US Cellular hotspots with data caps that were throttled initially just were not sufficient to support remote learning and Zoom and Google Meet. So we had to upgrade to essentially unlimited data plans, which the majority of our hotspots are now. We found that satellite was tough to attend remote classes. Satellite, it just has too much latency. It's just not fast enough, and it's also too expensive. So that was tough for our families that use satellite. And then again, we identified locations, not just down Highway number 9 in Black Mountain, in Broad River area there, but also in Fairview, plenty of places across those mountain ridges, Lester, and in downtown Asheville as well. There were places that couldn't get good cellular coverage and didn't have, a wired option either. And so, we still have probably 40 to 50 families that are commuting to a relative or to one of the Wi-Fi hotspot locations. Most most go to a relative if they're in the remote, on their remote days, which we did A week and A week, B week with remote, everybody remote on Wednesdays. So an A group would be in school on Mondays and Tuesdays, everybody remote Wednesdays, a B group on Thursdays and Fridays. And of course the school boards, working towards bringing everybody back. So we have also a return to learn website as well that you could visit if you wanted to at response.buncombeschools.org or returntolearn.buncombeschools.org. So a lot of lessons learned. I will say that through all of this, try to see some silver linings. I think that everybody is more technologically savvy. That goes for staff, educators, students, and parents and grandparents as a result of this. And so hopefully that plays a role moving forward as we try to incorporate personalized learning and move forward from this pandemic. But I always like to see a silver lining, so I'll end it with that. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate that insight. Quite a monumental effort. Thank you very much for sharing that. Next, we want to hear from Brian Willis, Vice President of IT at AB Technical College. Mr. Willis.
Hi, thank you. As you said, my name is Brian Willis, and I'm Vice President of IT and CIO at AB Tech here in Nashville and locations elsewhere. And to be clear, I'm not a dog, despite the picture, but I'll get back to that in a minute. AB Tech, just a few days less than a year ago, we were told, we might want to think about a landing path for migrating to an online environment. And the next business day, we were told, what, full stop. You cease operations until you're in an online environment. So we extended spring break by a week. We took 2 weeks and worked like crazy all across campus and came back in online format. We were fortunate that we had resources that we could tap into. We had loaner laptops in the library. The library's closed. We immediately commandeer those laptops and we deploy them to employees. We likewise were able to start handing out webcams and headsets and mobile hotspots and iPads and tools that are necessary. Being a school, we were able to help people with learning the technology. We could provide them LinkedIn Learning, web tools to help them figure out how to use their stuff. We could help in a lot of ways. One thing that we couldn't do is we couldn't help with connectivity. Hence me having a picture of a dog. I've discovered that my DSL in Southern Haywood County is simply not adequate for two-direction video, not reliably. I'm likely to lose you completely if I turn it on for more than a few minutes. And then I'd have to reconnect. We have students all over Buncombe and Madison County that are in a similar situation. Cellular doesn't really work for me where I am. My DSL is lousy. Cable is not really available where I am yet, or fiber. And it is a major challenge. It ties directly into the purpose of this workshop, of this summit. And it is a ubiquitous problem. It cuts across wealth and most other barriers or boundaries. It's a ubiquitous problem. And I'll give it back to you, Jeff.
Thank you. Some recurring themes that we're hearing there, and I feel your pain about the DSL. I have a great connection here in my office, but at home, I don't know that I would have been able to participate with video. So I certainly can appreciate that very much. Next, we would like to hear from Craig Fowler, Chief Information Officer for Western Carolina University. Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And so like a lot of campuses, we all went remote in the spring. And for us, we went remote after spring break. Over the summer was also remote. And then the fall, we came back and we were doing a hybrid class approach and modality. So I thought what I'd do is I talk a little bit about some things that worked for us. Then also some challenges that we had and areas that we wished we were further along when all of this stuff came about. Some of the things that worked for us, our VoIP phone system is in the cloud, and that worked really well for us. And because of the way it was structured and those kind of things, we were able to allow our help desks and our service centers and that kind of thing to be able to work from home. They could work remotely, and it was just like they were in the office. So that was a good thing and proved its worth. We spent several years putting in a virtual desktop environment that both a lot of our staff can use, but also specifically our students. And we use that because that was a way of delivering computer e-classroom or computer lab type capability and allow you to access that anywhere. Having that in place was actually a really good thing. Because when folks went remote and the students were home working, then they could still have access to the software and capabilities that they needed to have. We had spent some time investing in improving the way to access some of our storages and files and that kind of stuff remotely, and that worked well for our staff. Like everybody, we had been using Zoom, and then when we changed over to enterprise licenses for that, and that worked well for us. Microsoft Teams, I can't tell you the number of groups and departments and student work groups and all that moved over to Teams, and that was the thing that was their lifeline throughout this whole environment with it. Video became a big issue, and things we had been putting in Panopto over the past years, and that held up and through all the demand and that kind of thing. We had been experimenting with an automated AI chatbot to provide some IT support as a test. That turned out to actually start getting a lot more usage during this time. And as a matter of fact, there were so many students that were asking about, the changing things that were going on with COVID and what we may be doing differently. It seemed like things were changing hourly or at least every few days. And so we were actually able to update that chatbot to be able to handle COVID questions, and that was good. And later on, we've actually been able to add financial aid and advising and some other things to it, which has actually been good. And also some things around document management and having that online was also helpful as we started to do some things. From an IT perspective, we had been working on a work from home policy over a number of years, and a number of our IT people have worked from home from a day or two a week. And that turned out to actually be a good thing because a lot of the policies and ways you did it, we'd already worked through. And so from an IT perspective, that was nice. Over the past few years, we pretty much started to put in place if a faculty was getting a new computer that was required, that they get a laptop. That turned out to be a good thing too. Not to say everybody had it, but we had a good base for that as we went in. Also in 2018, we put in a student laptop requirement. So all freshmen coming in from 2018 on had to have a laptop. And so that was also good for us in being able to provide that. In addition, we have some of our technology commons had some loaner equipment, and we did provide that to some students. Also, you know, when you think about all this from a technology perspective, you have to think about cybersecurity. And one of the things that we had put in before all this was we had deployed multi-factor authentication for faculty, staff, and students. And so that was a good thing that we like that. And we also had started looking some more at being able to operate a dark data center. And so that worked out for us too. And it's interesting when you can say you don't need your data center people actually having to go hug servers during this. That was a good thing through it. One of the other pieces from an infrastructure perspective in our area here was the partnership that WCU Power had with Morris Broadband. And we started a program a couple of years ago and working with Morris to provide broadband to all of the WCU Power service area. And that, you know, services an area quite just around the university with about 3,000 or 4,000 customers. And I'm glad we've had that place because we've got a lot of faculty and staff that live in that area. And without it, that would have been much more difficult for us. But you can see all of those kind of things that I kind of mentioned. It requires some good broadband and capacity for our faculty, staff, and students to take advantage of all of that. You can put that in, but if they don't have the connectivity, then it doesn't work very well for it. Some of the challenges that we had, you know, this whole thing about bandwidth from the home, faculty, staff, and students. I mean, we heard from the, you know, some students, you know, they were going to McDonald's and sitting in the parking lot to access Zoom and to get to their LMS and those kind of things. We had faculty that had to come to campus and work out of their office because that's the only place that they had broadband to be able to do it. So there was a lot that had to be done, you know, around that kind of thing. You know, we had, like I mentioned, we had faculty and some of our students laptopped, our staff not so much in some areas. So that was an interesting area. I think academic integrity was an area that a lot of people had concerns about, and all through that, and some different tools that we did. Having to realign, you know, work for client-facing organizations. That was an interesting one. How do you do that? When do you do it? What time do you do it? Setting up appointments. There was a whole lot of things that we had to work with that. And also thinking about, you know, areas that we wished we had been further along when all of this was, you know, faculty preparation and training for hybrid pedagogies. And we ended up launching in preparation for further into the semester and into the fall, a lot of training and that kind of stuff around that. We did put in some training around alternative assessments to address this integrity issue around that. One of the big surprises for us was telehealth. And we ended up spending a lot of time on that. You know, we operate our own health services center. Well, even when people are not on campus, they're still getting calls and questions and you know, requests for assistance. We also operate a pro bono PT clinic. We have a speech and hearing clinic, and we have a clinical psychology program. And so when you look at all those kind of things, people were still looking for services, and people that were working in these areas, you know, how to do that. And so how do we establish telehealth and, you know, stand some things up, and, you know, what met HIPAA rules from Zoom and that kind of thing. So it turned out a lot of time was spent with that. We had started looking at electronic signature, and we spent more time working on that now through it. That was one we wish we had had a little bit more in place with it. You know, we found out the places where we had the manual processes that we wish they were electronic through it. So, and then for a number of things preparing for the fall, you know, just accessing procuring certain kinds of equipment. I mean, we ended up with buying dock cams and webcams and microphones and stuff to be able to set things up in classrooms and spacing classrooms out and doing all that kind of stuff. And we had some people that were very expert in finding some of this kind of equipment. And like I mentioned, we had almost 150 faculty go through training with respect to the summer and the fall in preparation and being able to do more online and hybrid pedagogical approaches. And that's a pretty good number of people to run through that. And and during all this, we had to move freshman orientation online, and we move new faculty orientation online, all those kind of things that we had to do. And also applications to make sure that we were tracking PPE for students and making sure everybody was getting what they needed in preparation for the fall. So it was a lot of people really strongly working together to pull together to make that all happen for that. So anyway, for that, I'll turn it back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Craig. I do want to, we have some time. I want to open up for some questions, but I want to take a little bit of a personal privilege and ask the first one. You alluded to this, Craig, and I'm curious for Barry also, as well as for all of our presenters. You touched, Craig, you touched upon a little bit of the social emotional aspect. You mentioned telehealth. And I know one of the issues that we have been trying to work on in our county is some of those students, in particular, who are almost out on an island, so to speak, and they're not, during this whole pandemic, they haven't really had the type of normal interaction that is really needed. And I'm curious, I'd like to begin with Barry, but did you do some specific reach outs to try to address that in addition to academic learning?
We did, and it was tough at first. We deployed Zoom across the district, so we had Google Meet before, and we did decide to go ahead and license Zoom, and so we had to set up Zoom so that our third-party contract service providers would be able to provide support services, and then do things like Craig was talking about, turn off the ability to save a chat, for example, due to HIPAA. So getting all that stuff in place to support SEL and just those services was crucial. And we made the decision to allow tutors, math tutors, music, etc., as well, to be able to Zoom. And that's there's pros and cons to that, obviously, but we did that. And then I know right now we're currently really focused on, I mentioned personalized learning. We're doing some pilots there this spring, but we're really focused on equity and SEL, so social emotional learning. So we have a lot of different programs that we're putting in place to make that a hyper focus as we bring students back, into the building in Buncombe County as well. So it's really been about trying to, create connections and have students still have connections throughout all of this, even though it's not face-to-face. It's definitely, we're looking forward to being able to get back to having those face-to-face, but so that's what we've been doing.
Thank you. Craig or Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say that we recognized at AB Tech pretty quickly that that there's a serious psychological aspect to the pandemic and the remote environment that we find ourselves in. And we've tried to be cognizant of that. And it manifests in a lot of ways. Things like instead of biweekly meetings, having weekly meetings, having touch-in sessions with people just to take their pulse and feel how things are going with them. Because not everybody responds to this environment the same way. And as technologists, we tend to be introverted and sometimes not recognize that people that we're interacting with are in a heightened stress environment at the same time that they're sitting at home in their PJs. You know, it's a very strange situation we have here. And that's been a challenge organizationally.
Yeah, I would add to that a little bit too with in the way that we were looking at some things with the what's kind of services. You know, we do provide some you know, counseling and psychological kind of services, and that was another one that we had turned on to using uh, telehealth, and also with advising and tutoring and being able to reach out and to see how people are doing. We were actually using some data out of our LMS, and we could tell who was not logging in and who had not done some stuff. And there was actually a group that we took and actually had people make some calls and get in touch with folks. So we were trying to use some of the data we had to know, you know, which students might be not engaging or falling behind out of that.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone else?
I have one, Jeff. And thank you so much for facilitating this educational breakout session. My hats off to the IT leaders on this call for pivoting, marshaling resources, doing the hard work to keep students and families connected. I can tell by these personal experiences we're not there yet. My name is Kathleen Evans. My job is Regional Director of AT&T. We care very deeply what is happening in Western North Carolina. We are working at the local, state, federal level to close the homework gap. We have a lot of offers on our website, but this is not about AT&T per se, but I have a follow-up question for Barry in particular. So if the Sprint program that is connecting so many families is winding down, what's next for Buncombe County?
Great question, Kathleen. Thank you. So, with the with our application already submitted for the project 10 million through T-Mobile, we're hoping to be included in that, and as I think T-Mobile is trying to include a really large group of schools across the country. My concern on that though is, like I've talked about before, the free version of that is after a first year reduced in terms of data cap. So with that program, the first year I think is unlimited at no cost, but then in year 2, if you want to continue unlimited, you've got to pay, and that cost is above $15, which currently we're large enough that we can negotiate a rate of $15 plus taxes and fees, so around $18 for an unlimited plan. Now I realize not every organization is able to have that kind of buying power to be able to do that, and maybe in the 30 to 40 or 50 or whatever range. And so again, I feel thankful for that. But so I may I may have better pricing from US Cellular than from T-Mobile for unlimited. So it really comes down to how long does this pandemic last? What does this look like for remote versus digital teaching and learning a year from now, 2 years from now, and how am I going to pay for it? We went into this without a budget of 150. There was no budget for these hotspots, and at the same time, our General Assembly actually took away our school technology funding for K-12 public schools this year. So we lost $275, almost $300,000 of our. I mean, that's all we get from the state for school technology. We lost every penny of that this year. Obviously, a lot of us are trying our hardest to get that back in the next budget cycle. So anything anybody on this call can do there to help, that would be great. But the General Assembly actually took that money away this year. And, some of that, thinking may be related to getting federal, support, which has helped some, but it doesn't help pay for operating expenses like those homework hotspot bills. So that's going to be huge moving forward no matter what. We all know now that we have a higher percentage. We know what our percentages are now because we've actually made them available to everybody that needs them, right, and filled that need. So we know what those numbers are. And now the question is, how do you pay for the unlimited? So yes, if you're working on a program, 2 gigabytes, 5 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes, 15 gigabytes, I mean, the number is much bigger if the students are having to attend virtual Zoom and Google Meet classes. So where does that rubber meet the road in terms of price point and speed and monthly data? So, we're planning to continue our program, obviously, and expand, our ability to support virtual academy students as well, some of which may or may not need, support in terms of connectivity. So I think moving forward, is huge from the service providers to give us an affordable option for whatever that percentage is in every county,
Yeah.
We've got that, but it's all the devil's in the details.
Right.
But we also have a $15 a month plan with even free service to some students, that meet a number of students in the classroom criteria. And we'll dig into that some, but at least for the short term going forward, I think there's going to continue to be a virtual element. I know kids are back in the classroom, but it's something to think about going forward.
Thank you. We have about, I believe Mark has his hand up. We have about 2 to 2.5 minutes before they're going to kick us out of here. So Mark, go ahead.
I'll make the question quick. All these answers, you got to give me a same quick response. Are there fiber to the home / connectivity incentives like the T-Mobile hotspot that says, here's your first year free, we'll connect you, we'll give you that service, and then we'll give you the similarly discounted price so that we can get off the 5G, which unfortunately I know everybody thinks is the salvation, but I don't agree. And I don't know who else are providers in here, but.
Okay, so y'all know I am. So Mark, tell me again, please, what your question is. I know it's about fiber to the home.
Are there similar hardline connectivity options for homes as the T-Mobile hotspot, the million connectivity, all the things that have been saving everybody? Where are the providers stepping up to do the same?
Again, you bet we are stepping up, and I think all the providers do have discounts to the home for their wired service. The cost is no more than $10 a month, and in AT&T world, we've actually expanded eligibility to that program this past year. So that is happening. Plus, you heard earlier about the work at the FCC, which is working on that as well. And Barry, back to you. We also advocate on the federal level expansion of the E-rate program to include learning from home, frankly, and covering those expenses. And I have a feeling we're going to be whisked away.
Thank you all. We're going to go back to the main room here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hey everyone, welcome back. That was good for you guys. Bill, you want to help us out?
Thanks to everybody for hanging in here. When we designed this program, if you recall, when we did the last summit at noon, we kind of stopped and said, stay around and have lunch and meet with various people to chat. So that was the format. And to have as many people hang in there for this long, I'm very impressed with your commitment, and you all deserve some sort of prize for doing that. We're going to have a quick report from each of the 4 groups and then a wrap up. And so let's start first with Arthur Solito, talk about funding. I don't see Arthur signing on. Will we switch to Greg?
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, there you are, Arthur.
I
Okay,
was prevented from unmuting myself. I talk too much, apparently. So in our session, we talked about grants from the FCC, the great grants, ARC, partnerships between the HHS and rural health, the internet office, and a couple of things to note. Comporium down in Transylvania County was recently announced a grant award to help with broadband implementation there. Let's see, we also mentioned Charter's commitment to following through on RDF funds, and I believe it was Mike Tank from Charter who mentioned that in addition to the public funding that they're getting, they're also putting a lot of private funds into these projects, so we're grateful for that. And we ended with David Brown, I believe, thanking Bill Cedarberg for his dogged relentlessness in keeping this all going, which is totally true, and grateful for Bill. So I'm sure I missed a bunch, but that was
an excellent report. Although it wasn't Dave, it was Matt Pearsall who was commenting on that. So, but thanks for the thought anyway. Greg Vogt, on talking about with Paul, continued that conversation.
Right, in the federal policy group, Paul, thank you very much for joining that group where we had more in-depth conversation about federal policy. And we talked about the need for more competition from municipal organizations involved in order to make sure pricing was lower. We also talked about the difficulty with pole attachment regulation and how it was very expensive for certain providers to get on existing poles, and that there was more work that needed to be done in that area. And finally, there was a strong statement that there needs to be more block grants to states to allow states to fund their own programs. In fact, it was a model that the FCC itself used in New York State that was very successful in building out broadband in New York. And that's what we talked about.
Great. Sounds good. And Stag Newman with Walter Johnston. Stag. Stag must have gone to feed his horses or something.
We're unmuting him, Bill.
Okay. I enjoy giving Stag a hard time, so this is delightful. So unmute Stag.
Okay. Yeah, first I'd like to thank Walter. We mainly took advantage of Walter's technical expertise to answer a lot of questions. I think I'd summarize the technology this way: is we need an all of the above solution because of the high cost in our mountains, because of our granite and our rocks and our beautiful hills and all. So we need deep fiber, and then people need high-speed tails, and those can be fiber to the curb by companies like River Street, French Broad Electric, AT&T, or Comporium. Can also be the hybrid fiber coax networks by companies like Spectrum, Charter, Morris. Also, I think Comporium has some high-speed And wireless has a very important role to play because some places we just don't have the fixed wired infrastructure. And, that's a Skyrunner and Open Broadband. There are quite a few other wireless providers in the further western counties that I won't try to name all of them. And cellular has a good role to play, but you really only get the superior cellular performance if you're really close to a cell site. So that means, again, more deep fiber, more cell sites. And the way we solve these problems is working together to aggregate demand and come up with enough funding to close the business case. And a lot of that cost is unfortunately not to do with technology. It's the civil engineering and permitting and just the nitty-gritty hard stuff.
Thank you, Stagg. And now to Jeff McDaris, School Superintendent down in Transylvania County, also a partner with us on the My Future NC, and an impressive guy. So Jeff, I haven't talked to you before on this, but welcome and thanks for doing this. Did your group break apart with fistfights on the virtual world or something?
Well, we're celebrating Dr. Seuss here today, but let me give you some rapid fire takeaways from our meeting, which was great. First of all, very impressive. Educators, so many individuals, we turned on a dime, quite frankly, and were able to put out some ability to do remote learning pretty quickly. Partnerships are incredibly important. This has made us all more tech savvy. It was a monumental effort and continues to be to provide accessibility to some families in areas that are not that far off the beaten path, but they just cannot get a signal to them. There are some places that just cannot be reached. We need more broadband than you think. My takeaway on that would be like the Atlanta interstate system years ago when I would go down and watch the Braves. When they built 2 lanes, they realized they needed 4. And I think that we're finding that out increasingly from the conversations that, especially in households where you have multiple students and parents that need to be on at the same time. Professional development is critical, cannot be overlooked. Certainly laptops versus desktops. Cybersecurity is something that everyone needs to be thinking about as we broaden our base out there. And we cannot overlook the importance of social emotional contacts with people as they are somewhat out on an island. But I will close by saying the creativity out there is heightened and it's actually very enriching. And I think the sky's, there's no limit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Unbelievable that we're kind of right on schedule, but I noticed that Mark Hoyt signed on, and Mark was with us at the very beginning of this whole process. Mark, I'm going to ask you for a 1-minute summary of what you heard and any quick thoughts. We need to unmute Mark. Well, so much for Mark's quick thoughts.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Mark.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize it was locked. Sarah, you locked me out. So I'm impressed at the diversity and the breadth that this group and collaboration has gotten to. I remember a much smaller group when we started, mostly city and county folks, and now it's including a huge, enormous group, and it seems to be making great progress. I want to thank Sarah for her comment about it's not just connectivity anymore. I know there are people not connected. I understand the problems, but there are so many more people that have connectivity and don't know how to use the technology, don't have the education, don't have the pieces that make it useful and make them be able to join the rest of society and do those kind of things. So please focus on that as your next step and help people understand how to use the technology, and then help us behind the scenes get the stuff ready so everybody can keep connecting and getting your work done.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And finally, when we organized all this, we were really impressed with comments that Sarah Thompson made. She's done a great job leading the Southwest Commission. And Sarah, why don't you wrap it all up for us and send us on our way?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. The planning committee thought maybe we should end this with a call to action, so I'll do my best. This is a regional issue, and Sarah Nichols' organization, Nathan Ramsey with Land to Sky Regional Council, and us with the Southwestern Commission Councils of Government are regional planning organizations. So continue to work with us. We've been working on this issue for years now. Let's work together on this. We've done a ton of planning and mapping, and we're currently promoting the heck out of the state survey so we can get some more accurate maps. Also, continue to organize locally, work with your providers, befriend all the experts that are on today's call. Let's keep them in our region helping us move this issue. The broadband landscape is constantly shifting and is going to continue to do so. It's a regional, statewide, national issue that's going to be solved and advanced at the community level. So the solution in one community may not mirror the solution in a neighboring community, and there's a lot of variables at play here. Let's continue to advocate, educate your stakeholders, encourage them to advocate. Are there funding programs that aren't working? Let's figure out how to get them to work better. Are the FCC maps faulty? Let's fix them. Should we be seeing federal funds passed down as block grants? Let's advocate for that. And, you know, throughout this call this morning, I've been thinking that maybe we need a stronger, more organization around advocacy on this issue in Western North Carolina. And I think the COGS could really help with that. So thank you all for your continued perseverance on this incredibly important issue. We're living in very interesting times. Technology is changing rapidly, and the future of our rural communities especially are sure to be brighter if we get high-speed broadband out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And now comes the point on the program where all the credits roll at the end. Just a quick thanks for Sarah Nichols, who worked so hard on this. And Sarah does a great job with Land of Sky. We have a couple students from UNCA, Anitra Griffin and Elias Landsman, who have helped put this all together. Paul Moon, also from Land of Sky. Thanks, Paul, for your work. Mark Zarnecki with the website and on the technology side. Thanks to everybody that has participated on this. And I know a lot of you would just like to keep talking broadband, but I'm hungry for lunch and I want to go and end this. So thanks to everybody, and we'll be in touch. You got some great written material that we sent you. Be sure to read that and get it all printed out and distributed all around your neighborhood. So with that, have a great day. And Chancellor Brown, is it okay that we sign off now? I see you're still with us. Keep those catamounts working hard down there. Okay. Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye.